Good evening, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. After a very long Thursday. So I've now seen the Thunderbolts. Marvel Studios is the Thunderbolts. And I went into this with weird expectations. I will say I went into this with minimal expectations. That's probably the right way to describe it, because it's like last year we had Deadpool and Wolverine. That was Marvel Studios' only release. And it was a sequel to two of the best superhero movies to come out in that era. Like, you know, we look back fondly on Deadpool, and even Deadpool 2 is it's not as strong as Deadpool, but it's still pretty solid. But it's this, you know, it's these are acclaimed, and then you get this year where it's like Captain America Brave New World is in title and in lead Captain America 4, but in terms of plot, it's Incredible Hulk 2, which is a maligned movie. Later this year, we have Fantastic Four, and the last times we had Fantastic Four movies in theaters, we had the 2005 and 2007 Fantastic Four and Rise of Silver Surfer, with Jessica Alba's Invisible Woman and Chris Evans and all that. And then after that, it was Josh Trank's absolute debacle, Fanforstic, which was a movie we talked about in the very early days of this show. Or at minimum, we talked about it on 30-minute reviews. Point is, it was not well received at the time. It has not aged well. It's not good. The Fantastic Four movies are not exactly strong releases. And then we have Thunderbolts, which is a sequel to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I really liked, but a lot of people didn't. And I understand some, I'm not going to say all, I will say some of the criticism of that show. And to be fair, a good amount of that criticism should not be levied on that show, if we're being honest. I feel like there's a solid amount that belongs on just reality as a whole, where it's like the entire reason why that show had as many issues as it did is because it got stuck. I'm getting stuck on the slide. It's because it got stuck in production during COVID, and they had to change their plot because of the real world pandemic, because the show included a pandemic, a man-made pandemic, and it makes sense. They changed their show. They did all they could, and then here we are. Now, it's not a sequel to that, but it's also a sequel to Black Widow, which is another pandemic movie that's not entirely well received. And I watched it in theaters, and I really liked it when I saw it in theaters initially. And then I watched it again more recently, and I wasn't quite as on board. And I think part of the reason was, when I saw it in theaters the first time, it was like, we're back in a theater. This is the first big release. We're going to be back in the theater watching a movie. It's great. Look at this. There's the Marvel logo. Let's get ready, everyone. This is fantastic. You know, that was kind of what I was feeling when I was seeing that. Then I watched it. I'm like, oh, the effects don't really hold up here, and the plot's not great, and it could be better. Like, I have no problem with Taskmaster, but it's just kind of there. And now here we are, because that was all 2021. Here we are now in 2025, 4 years later. And I feel like this movie has two big things that are going to keep it from getting the box office I think it deserves. Because I keep hearing the ad on the radio, it's the best movie since Endgame. And I'm going to say pump the brakes on that. If you've seen that ad on TV, or if you've seen that ad while streaming something, or you've seen it on YouTube, or you've heard it on the radio, pump the brakes on your expectations, because I don't think this is the best movie since Endgame, because I think the best movie since Endgame is still Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I think that, like, Guardians 3, I don't think I've watched that one since it came out, but Guardians 3, I think you can make the case is better than this. I'll watch both when this comes to streaming, and we will render a judgment then. But it's, you know, that it's better than my recollection of Guardians. My recollection of Guardians 3 is that Guardians 3 is better. So the question here is, after all of this and having watched this movie, it's like, is it good? And I will say, yes, the movie is good. Hallelujah, the movie is good. It's way better than Captain America was. It's way better than a lot of the other stuff we've seen now. Maybe not Daredevil, but a lot of the other movies that have come out. It's good. My biggest problem with this movie, aside from the weird effects at times, is there are a few moments in this movie where there are, let's call them questionable effects. Like the fight scene that happens in the artist formerly known as Avengers Tower, that's now Allegra's Tower, that they don't really give a name to. It's that is, where that happens, like, where it's the team versus, because my mom would fucking yell at me if she heard me say that, the team versus Bob/Sentry, like, that is, there's some questionable CGI that happens in that scene. There's a lot of questionable CGI in that scene. At one point, he picks up Yelena, and it's like, oh, I don't think he's actually touching Yelena. Like, I don't think that, like, I think you could see his hand and Yelena are not on the same plane of existence. It's a very weird thing. And I get it. Like, I'm forgiving of that scene because it's very clear that they're trying to, They're trying to do it all in one take. And I appreciate that. They do a great job of it. But there's some wonky CGI. The biggest issue that I have with this movie is that it came out in 2025. And I think that arguably you could say the same thing about Captain America. Because let's go through the movies that have come. And I would say arguably, I know this is something like, there are two other movies that I think would be top 5 post-Endgame movies. I think the Marvels belongs in that conversation. And I think Shang-Chi belongs in that conversation. But the thing is with this movie should have come out like 3 years ago. If this movie came out in like 2023, or maybe 2 years ago, but this movie came out in like 2023, I think it would have worked a lot better, and it also would have worked a lot better towards setting up the universe in a way that makes sense. Because one of the things we talk about a lot on the show, anytime we talk about a Marvel thing, is that, I said it before, and I'll say it again, Phases 4, 5, and 6 are not the multiverse saga, they're the studio interference saga. It's Disney trying to show value of their acquisition of Fox through Marvel, because Marvel had the most consistent releases, and it was the easiest way to show, look at all the money we're going to make on this. So, watching this back and sitting through this, watching this movie, like, this would have made sense as the end of Phase 4, or the end of Phase 5. Well, I guess it is the end of Phase 5, but the end of Phase 5, or the end of Phase 4. Because, like, let's say we want to keep things the way they reasonably are. Like, here's the thing. Like, this movie could have come out before Shang-Chi. This movie could have come out before Multiverse of Madness. This movie could have come out before, like, arguably, the two movies, the things that should have been prioritized out of Endgame were Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Captain America 4, and now Thunderbolts. Because that would have been, if you had that and you had done that properly, you probably would have done well. Like, maybe Hawkeye. But the idea that, like, this movie has so many ties to the early days of the post-Endgame MCU, and virtually none of what we've seen recently. Because, like, let's backtrack through. There's a passive reference to Brave New World, which was a few months ago. There's a passive reference to that. The movie makes no attempt to rectify how this works within the logic of Daredevil, and I think that that's probably for the best, because I don't think that would work. Going back further, the next movie back from that was Deadpool and Wolverine. No mention of anything there. And in fact, when we go back further, then you got the Marvels in 2023. What else in 2023? 2023 was also Quantumania, was also the Marvels, was also, there was one in the summer too. What was the summer movie in 2023? Early summer. It was the May movie. I forgot what it was. because in 2022 it was Love and Thunder and Multiverse of Madness. And 2021 was... I feel like I'm missing stuff. But the point is, very little reference to the wider MCU besides these characters. And I think that, like, it's weird when you get to the end of this. Or you get, like, halfway through and Bucky gets involved directly. Which is the most surreal part of this, that an acting member of Congress is actually going to get off his ass and do something. That was the thing that made me break the immersion in this movie, is that it's like, hold on, do you mean to tell me that a member of the House is going to actually get up and do something? No. That's not it. But the idea that, like, when we get to that point, Bucky shows up, but Sam doesn't. That's the thing that I'm like, that's a little weird. Why is Sam not here for this? Like, it feels like something that Sam should be here for. And he's not. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I feel like we kind of need that. Like, and let's not get into, like, there is a political issue with this movie. Let's touch on that a little bit. Like, why is Sam not here, but every other Captain America variant is in this movie? And you're making a new Avengers team. And again, Val is not in Brave New World. Val is not in. She's not mentioned in Brave New World. She's not there at all. Like, you could just ignore her entirely. Like, it's almost as if she does not exist. And yet here she is here. And it's like, if you had her involved, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's why Sam's not here, because he didn't want to be involved with the Avengers Initiative. But to get to the end of this movie and have it be, we are, and I know it's all for a payoff in a post-credit scene with a joke that's going to lead into the Fantastic Four tease, but the idea that, like, oh, we're going to get through the entire, like, the whole movie. Ooh, that was an ear accident. The whole movie, not for me, for two other assholes. The whole movie comes to a head with this fight that's happening in New York and at the Avengers Tower, and like, that's the thing, is that this is very clearly the thing. And then you get to the end, and it's like the Thunderbolts, and they rip it away, and it's the New Avengers. They should have just called the movie The New Avengers from the beginning. Like, I don't understand why they did this the way they... Like, there are so many baffling decisions about this for the wider MCU, and for marketing standpoint. Like, why would you not just call this The New Avengers? Alright, here's Avengers 5, it's The New Avengers. It's in, like, we are now 13 years this weekend removed from the release of the Avengers. Why not just call it The Avengers? And we're ending Phase 5 on an Avengers movie. Like, it would feel more it's like you want to get people back into the groove of things. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're ending this on an Avengers movie, and that's where this is. It's like a lot of what we've seen happen in the MCU feels like they've been trying to kind of lay groundwork for things. And again, let's just talk about why this was. I talked about it in studio interference. While they were working on the deal to acquire Fox, with that knowledge that's going to happen, they had to have contingencies in place for what happens if that doesn't go through. Because at the time, we can't forget, there were competing offers. Apple, once it became public, because Rupert Murdoch offered 20th Century to Iger, and Iger, in his book, I think, speculated that it was to keep him out of the presidential race against Trump, but in 2020. But because he'd keep him occupied with this big merger. And it's this thing where it's like, the idea that they had to keep in a holding pattern while they're trying to figure out what that is. That's why we get Eternals. I guess you do have to have Eternals too in that. That's why we get, Black Widow, which is a prequel. Those are the first two movies out. We get Shang-Chi, which hasn't been addressed since. Like, we haven't had any reference to Shang-Chi since. That was in 2021, 2022. Yes, because that was between Black Widow and Eternals. Shang-Chi came out in September. It was Labor Day weekend. And then Eternals came out in November. And then the next year you had Multiverse of Madness. You had, and then wasn't also Spider-Man in 2021? The fucking stacked year in 2021. But it's just like, all of these things are kind of ebbing and flowing on each other, creating this mess. And I think that what we're getting to now with Thunderbolts is, this is what kind of the original plan was going to be, minus a few other things. And again, let's get back to, I started on the identity politics thing. It's like, okay, so Sam doesn't show up. We have 2 white Captain Americas, one of whom is the one who was selected to be Captain America until being disavowed for beheading a guy, a foreign national, during a mission on live video. And then the Russian Captain America. It's a little on the nose. And then on top of that, you also have, Ghost is there, sure. But and then we introduce at the end, it's like, and here are the new Avengers. Great, here are the new Avengers. It's Ghost, it's Yelena, it's Red Guardian, it's Bob, and it's who was the other guy? And it's the Winter Soldier. It's like, this team doesn't. It's not that it doesn't inspire confidence in me. I wouldn't say, but I think the bigger issue is, nothing about this team is really like, we've introduced so many cool new characters over the course of this. In the age since Endgame, we introduced Ms. Marvel, who is fantastic. We introduced Kate Bishop, who is fantastic. We introduced, what was her name? Shang-Chi. Loved him too. We have a new Black Panther. We have Ironheart. There are so many new characters who have been introduced, and that's not even getting into the ones that are more openly maligned. But we've introduced all these characters, all these cool new characters, and none of them are referenced, and it's just it's weird. It's a weird choice, and I get that. I don't buy that Miss Marvel would work for Val and then end up in that situation to end up on this team. Nor do I expect her response time to be that great. But come the fuck on. We're in Manhattan. Spider-Man lives in Manhattan now. He doesn't live in Queens anymore. Remember? He bought that shitty apartment in Midtown Manhattan, 3 blocks away from Rockefeller Plaza, somehow, with no money and no job and no references because no one knows he exists and no high school diploma. And he's got this albeit shitty apartment, but apartment in Manhattan nonetheless, that he can somehow afford. I don't understand how any of that works. Regardless, don't think about it too hard. Either way, the point, I've been told several times, don't think about that too hard by several people. The point is, where the fuck is he in this? Where the fuck is Kate? Because isn't Kate still living in New York? Doesn't Hawkeye end with her? Yeah, she goes back to the farm with Clint, but doesn't she live in New York full? Yeah, because in in the Marvels we see her living in New York. She's just kind of she's back at the same place with Lucky the Pizza Dog. We're in the middle of a fucking season of Daredevil that just ended, where Wilson Fisk has assumed authoritarian control of the city of New York. He's deputized this weird pseudo-governmental agency or segment of the police, and he's using them to enforce. Oh wait, I'm sorry. That's the news. That's not Daredevil. Oh no, that is Daredevil too. I'm sorry. That's both. But that's not addressed, and it's okay, so yeah, Punisher is in this cage, but where's Matt? And I think that here's the thing, for this movie to end as the new Avengers, I think to an extent, if you call it Thunderbolts, which is what they ended up doing, you can get to the end and not question too much when these things don't 100% line up. Because that is something that in an Avengers movie I would like to see, especially considering that what The Void is doing is taking your worst traumas and capturing you in them. I would like to see Spider-Man go through that. I would like to see Matt Murdock go through that. I would like to see Kate Bishop go through that. I think that these are all things that, like, oh, I would enjoy to see that on this show, like, in this movie. But they didn't do that. And I think had you called it the New Avengers, and it's like, but, like, it's just stupid. It's like, you know, I don't know. I like the title reveal at the end, and it's the exact thing that I've been saying for like 6 months now. Like, I should have just fucking lied and said I had an insider who said the asterisk meant it was going to be the New Avengers. It was like, and just seemed like I had an insider, but no. We strive for a level of journalistic integrity here. It's just I'm a good guesser, and it's just like I'm not thrilled by this team. And there are a lot of things that, like, had they just built this from the beginning and used this, a lot of the setup wouldn't work. But I think if you just redid it a little bit, and, like, you could do half good guys, half bad guys, and have it be, like, here are the bad guys, Val is working, and these Avengers are working, because he's the director of the CIA. Like, if Sam agrees at the end of Brave New World, we gotta reunite the team. And then this movie opens with, here's the New Avengers team. And then Val, the director of the CIA, is like, hey, so I got this shit that's going on. These people are trying to break into this secure government facility. We need to get in there. Like, that's something that would be interesting. Like, and that's something that you could have had almost entirely the same setup. Because if it is still Sentry, and Sentry is still the one that is going to be the goal here, because she can control Sentry, and then that's one, and she can be in charge of everything. Like, yeah, that still works. So it's like, okay, well, they're gonna destroy each other, then you kill them all, and then boom, Sentry saves them, and then boom, you're good. You, like, the plan is still just as nonsensical, but it you could still bring in more heroes, and it. Like, because that's the thing, is that it's like all of the things at the end where they use real-world complaining, which is the thing I found really funny in the credits, is that it's like all the headlines, all the fake headlines that they had about the New Avengers team are all jokes that I had seen when they announced the Thunderbolts, and it's like, why do they call this team? And it was like, I like that they did that. I thought that was funny, because it's like the same thing happened with the same thing happened with She-Hulk, and I appreciated it there too. But the idea that, like, we get to the end of this and it's like, okay, yeah, they are this, this team, and it's questionable, and it's like the team just kind of like, okay, well, all right, well, Val's still going to be the director of the CIA, but we're just going to work for her, but we're not really going to work for her, we're just going to do whatever we want. The whole thing is a little weird. And there's one plot thing in this movie that really irked me. And I don't know if it should irk me as much as it does, but it does. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. In the movie, Alexei, Red Guardian, is a limo driver. He's living in Baltimore, although he says it's D.C. 1 block over is Baltimore, but he's technically in D.C. And he goes, and he's got this limo service. You mean to tell me the director of the CIA, and later on in the movie, he's like, I'm the Red Guardian, Alexei Shostakovich, I'm the Red Guardian, and she's like, who? And I'm like, you mean to tell me the director of the CIA doesn't know the Russian Captain America is living in the D.C. metro area and doesn't know who he is or that he ever existed? It's like he's watching footage of himself on TV in like VHS reruns of what he has done in the past. He's like, this was televised. Like, you mean to tell me that American intelligence didn't know there was a Russian, like a Soviet Captain America? And the thing with this is, like, okay, great, like, cool, so you didn't know that. Like, and that's that entire thing is to explain away, is that earlier in the movie, she gets into a limo that's not black, Oh, no, it is black. It's a different limo. But the limo service that was hired by the CIA was Red Guardian Limo Service. And it's like, I don't know. DC's a big city. They deal with a lot of things. I would like to think the director of the CIA probably has her own car service. She's not hiring a limo at another company. And certainly they're not hiring a limo called Red Guardian Limousines. It's like, why the fuck? The whole thing is ridiculous. But that's the whole thing that gets him involved in the movie. But again, you could have come up with something else. It's plot contrivance to get him in. It's just really weird that it's like, you mean to tell me the director of the CIA didn't know the Red Guardian existed? Really? It's so dumb. Even if the United States did downplay it to the public to be like, oh, well, we haven't been able to recrack the super soldier serum, but the Russians did. Like, even if they did do that, like, come on. You mean to tell me that, like, she doesn't have a passing knowledge of that? Because, like, if the Russians managed to get a front-facing super soldier of the type of Captain America in that way, like, not like the Winter Soldier where it's the same thing. The Winter Soldier and the Winter Soldier didn't work for Russia. He worked for the highest bidder through Hydra. Like, that's one thing. For him to be like, this is a front-facing Captain America-style character on TV and being advertised, you mean to tell me that the American government didn't try to downplay that? The whole thing is ridiculous. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. But regardless, I enjoy the rapport between the characters. I think they have great chemistry. I really like Walker's starting to grow on me. And I think that, like, Ghost has more to do here, which benefits her because she didn't have a ton to do in Ant-Man and the Wasp, so giving her the space to do stuff here is great. I don't know, I think it weakens Natasha a little bit because it took Natasha an entire movie to fuck up and not kill Taskmaster, and then Ghost does it in 15 seconds, so, I mean, good for her, I guess. It's like, it's another thing where it's like, this movie feels reactionary in that, okay, we introduced all these characters who are not white and not men, so we're going to, when we rebuild this team, we're going to use these characters. These are the characters we're going to use, and it's like, oh, people didn't like Taskmaster because it was a woman, because that's the thing, is that it's a guy at work who's constantly bitching about it. Like, when I say constantly bitching about Taskmaster, I'm like, you would think that Taskmaster fucked his mother based on how much this guy complains about, specifically Olga Kurylenko's portrayal of Taskmaster. He despises it because it's a woman. And I'm like, it's really not that big a deal, because other than that, the character's fine. Does she mimic all the other Avengers fight styles? Yes? Okay, great, move on. So, oh well, it's to appease people like that. Like, oh good, she's dead, I'll go watch that movie now. And I think that the chemistry is great. I think that, like, there are a few great comedic beats in this movie, like when they're all in the various, shame rooms, they call them, where it's like Bob absorbs people into the shame room thing, and they're all going through them, and then Bucky finally gets through to them, and they're like, what did you say? And he goes, oh no, I had a great life. It was all great for me. And I was like, I love a guy who's gonna sit here and get through his trauma with sarcasm. It's fantastic. And that's the thing with this movie, is that it's a movie about depression and trauma and moving past it. And I think that, like, last year, one of my favorite movies was Inside Out 2. It made my top 5 or top 10 list. And part of the reason was it takes this really grown-up concept, this idea of dealing with anxiety that comes from, changes in the world around you, and then how does that shift? Like, how does that shift who you are, and how do you manage it? This is about the depression that comes from mundanity, which I think that Yelena sums up very well several times throughout the movie. Like, there's a moment where she's talking about getting everyone, like, you know, getting up in the morning, thinking about all of her mistakes, going to work, going home, drinking, thinking about all her mistakes, going to sleep, sitting on her phone scrolling. I was like, oh fuck, that hits. Like, her explanation, and Alexia being like, yeah, you did bad shit, but we got to move past. Like, the whole thing is great. And then that being the thing is, like, we got to get Bob through into, you know, past this, because he's become the Void. I'm very happy that Geraldine Viswanathan, or however you pronounce her name, was the one who took that role, because originally it was supposed to be Aoi Dabiri, if that's how you pronounce her name, from The Bear. And I feel like, not to disparage her, because she did a great job in this movie, and I've seen her in other things, and she's really good in other things too. But, and I would have liked for her to have a bigger role, but knowing that was almost Aoi Dabiri, it's like, oh good, they can use it for something else now. You know, maybe there's a certain weather-themed mutant they're going to cast young. Who knows? And then we can have two members of the cast of The Bear on famous superhero teams. But yeah, I think this was a very this is a very well put together movie. I think that this, had Marvel reworked what they were doing, and it's, again, I'm hesitant to assign blame to Marvel Studios for a lot of this. I think a lot of this comes from Disney interfering at the corporate level. The point is, you get to the end of this movie, and it's like, oh, this should have been the end of Phase 4. And then even if you wanted to do the Avengers versus the New Avengers for Phase 5, and then you get to Phase 6 Doomsday, that would have made a lot more sense and been a lot better. I really love Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I will maintain it is my favorite post-Endgame movie. It is the strongest of the post-Endgame movies. That said, it should not have been the end of Phase 4. Phase 4 should have ended with some kind of bigger crossover thing, because it just felt like another movie. Like, if they said that Phase 4 ended with Spider-Man, I'd be like, okay, fine. Phase 4 ends with Spider-Man. All right, fine. I think that Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was not the movie to end off on, and I still think they should have ended off on a crossover, because that's always been the way it is, and now here we are too, because this is the last Phase 5 movie. We are eventually going to do a ranking of Phase 5. I got to talk to Josie about that, but we are eventually going to do a ranking of Phase 5, and this is where it ends off. This is the last Phase 5 movie. So, what is it? What do we do? Like, where do we go from here? And I think that's a great, you know. And Phase 6 is going to be short, and then we'll be in Phase, like, 2 years from right now, we will be out of Phase 6. Because all Phase 6 is, in terms of movies, is Fantastic Four, Secret Wars, or Doomsday, Spider-Man: Brand New Day, and then the Secret Wars. So 2 years from now, we will be in the Age of Mutants. So, good for us, I guess. But we'll wrap up there for today. Our next episode will be next week, probably, in terms of movies with new releases. I haven't looked at the calendar yet, but we will, figure that out. But we'll wrap up there for today. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.